Live, local, late breaking.
Daniel Wallace is an accomplished engineer who is responsible for the design and development of solar renewable energy products for Bithenergy in Maryland and around the globe. He joins us today to tell us more. Welcome, Daniel. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so of all the things in the world you could have done with your life, what attracted you to engineering and ultimately renewable energy?
So I think my love for engineering started when I was a child. You know, I used to take my dad's old radios and the VCRs from the house that would break, and I would be able to reassemble them and put them back together for him and my mother to watch TV. And I said, man, this is interesting. This is a gift. And so when I went to college, that was my focal point. I went to Polytech here in Baltimore in the A-course program, went to Virginia Tech for undergrad electrical engineering, and that was the love that I had in me. The renewable energy piece really took off when we were doing some ministry work in Africa, and part of it was building a renewable energy system for one of the homes we sponsor there. And it made me realize how important energy is for the children. They were able to go to school at night. They were able to have additional resources like internet possibly because we were able to stabilize this grid. And then the other thing that was a blessing is when we were done, they actually appreciated it. It was a blessing to them. They appreciated the work that we have done. And that's really what, for me, was hit home. This is something that we really need to dig into. How do we make this a possibility for the entire world, not just Maryland or the United States?
How viable is renewable energy right now, and how much are we using it?
Sure. So renewable energy is huge now. With the federal and state incentives, it really brings the cost of solar ownership down to a point where it's almost what's called grid parity. And that's the point where the cost for power from a renewable system matches the cost of power from the grid. So it's an easy sale. If you have a choice between coal-fired power or renewable power, which one would you choose? And that's where we are now with the federal incentives we have in place now, as well as the cost of the equipment that we're purchasing dropping.
We've been talking a lot about money, at least in the first segment.
Sure.
And so what is it, in terms of financing global energy products, how do you go about that?
So it starts with the credit worthiness of the off-taker, right? Can they buy this product? That's number one. Second thing is, what's the cost of power in their region? If I'm able to provide them power at an incremental savings from what they're currently paying, it makes financial sense for them to consider renewable energy. So that's the second piece. Third piece is cost of land. When you pay more for the land, that's more for the entire project. That's higher the cost of power has to be. In areas where the land is cheaper, it makes more sense for renewable energy because your cost of power is cheaper, thus your savings is 20 to 30% on what you're currently paying.
All right, so give me a sense of what you guys are doing in your business.
Sure.
Is it residential? Is it commercial? Where's your focus?
We bypassed the residential market and we focus on commercial, specifically for hospitals, not-for-profits, and facilities like that. BG&E in this area offers a special program which is called virtual aggregate net metering, which allows us to generate a site remotely, Harford County, and deliver power to Baltimore City and other facilities throughout the BG&E territory.
I think I've seen letters in my mailbox about
You probably have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, it's called net metering.
Okay, so that's what you're doing. I'm curious, though, with the new Congress, we're hearing a lot about the Keystone XL pipeline. If that should happen, how much does that compromise your ability to further your renewable energy plans? Sure,
that's a good question. That's a good question. A lot of it comes down to what incentives are going to be in place for renewable. The good thing about renewable energy, it's not fuel-based. It's a non-exhaustive fuel. The sun, the wind, the water, God willing, will never go away. And so there's always a fuel base that we have for the power to be generated. So I think it doesn't necessarily offset the oil costs and gas prices, but I think they're competitive in the same goal. How do we get to grid parity? How do we get to a point where the cost of power meets what the grid price is?
All right. Let's talk about the impact of renewable energy on the global economy. Given your international experience, you've had quite a bit.
Sure. The biggest piece for us really is the job creation piece. There's a significant cost when we do a system in the labor, right? And part of that starts with how do you educate and train youth, veterans, we call it retooling, that they can do these projects not only in the United States but also internationally. Whether you build a 1 megawatt system in Howard County or whether you build a 2 megawatt system in Western Africa, the process is the same. The grid is the same. The components are the same. The only difference is the production. The closer you are to the equator, the more your systems produce. And that's what we look at when we look at projects throughout not only the United States but also globally.
All right. So where do you foresee things going in the next year, 10 years or so?
That's a good question. I get that question a lot. I think there's three main points that you're going to see emerge over the next couple years. One is going to be battery storage. How do you store the power from these systems so it can be used at times when the cost of power is the highest? Two is microgrids. If you look at our projects we do at the Army bases, how do we centralize or make a micro grid for the actual base, where if we have some type of attack or terrorist attack, the bases and these microorganisms and grids can still focus and still produce. That's the second thing. And then the third thing, I believe, is land development. It takes land to build these type of sites. And if you look at companies like solarlandlease.com, which is a new company, their focus is how do you develop and take agricultural land where you maybe get $1.50 an acre for current lease rates to make it a solar farm where you get $1,500 to $2,000 an acre. That's a game changer for small farmers. That's a game changer for the agricultural community. That puts kids through college. That's retirement funds for families. So I think you'll see in the next couple of years those three major points emerging.
So what is Bithenergy doing right now to make those things happen? Who are you talking to? What's the plan?
So we're building a 10 megawatt solar farm currently in Howard County.
Okay.
The first 2 megawatts is already built for Chimes International, which is a Jewish not-for-profit in Baltimore. The second phase of the 10 megawatt system will be for Columbia Association. And so we're working with hospitals and not-for-profits to build power infrastructure for their organizations.
Okay. So what is the best advice for economic survival in 2015?
That's a good question. I get that question a lot. I think number one, education. You got to be online. You got to be paying attention to what's happening in the economy, what's happening in politics. That's number one. Number two, strategic partnerships, right? You can't do everything yourself. And as entrepreneurs, we always think that I can do it, I can do it. The key is who can you partner with to deliver this same service? You want to have a portfolio or a suite of services you can go to a client and offer. So I think that's number two. And number three is faith. I mean, we're in tough times right now. We're not out the woods yet, but we see the light. And the key is really focus on that light, not what's going on around you, the issue we're having here, but how do we get to that next level? How do we make sure that our kids, our great-grandkids, and our great-great-grandkids have a sustainable future? I
think that's a great message. We thank you for being here, and we thank you for focusing your energy on Maryland.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Good stuff is happening.
I grew up here.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Daniel. Coming up next, to hear key financial advice from Karen Gibbs. Stay with us. You're watching 11 TV Hill.